All right, so now that we've got our menu set up and everything, one of the things that I want to talk about is how you can register new sidebars, or also called widget areas. Now we already have a sidebar over here, and this is the where the monster widget is set up. You know, we had set that up earlier to show up here. Um, but the thing is, the widget area doesn't have to be literally on the side. It can be anywhere. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have something that can become a footer down here. So if you look at our XD layout, just as a reminder, let's sort of get down lower, and you'll see here that we had a layout here. And let me quickly show you a different version that I had done, and it actually already had, you know, sort of a mock-up of some stuff down in the widget. So it would have like a, you know, the logo with the copyright information, and then maybe some links to recent articles or something, and then a featured video section, right? So those are the kinds of things you could have down there. But we need to create that section. And so to do that, let me show you first thing you need to look at is go to your functions page. And we're going to scroll up to this place. It's around line 79. And it's where it says function Topcat widgets init. All right. And so the init means initiate. So it's going to initiate the sidebars. And where it says register sidebar, it has an array of information. So this is an associative array. So the ID is going to be a string for each one, so it's name, and then the value is this, and then there's another one that's ID, and then the value is something that you're gonna give it as a name, and so on and so on. So I want to show you how you can easily just add another widgetized area. So I want to copy where it says register sidebar. I want to copy this. I want to come down here, and we're going to paste another one, and we're going to make some changes here. So the first thing is I'm going to change this first name. This is actually going to be the name of the sidebar, so we're going to call it footer. This is what's going to show up in the back end of WordPress that you're going to see. So we're going to call it footer. And then here, instead of sidebar 1, we're going to also call it footer. Okay. And you can also do footer dash sidebar. Right, so this right here, this value is the value that you're going to call whenever you go to actually use it. See, like over here, sidebar 1 is what gets called whenever it goes to get the sidebar. Well, this is the thing that we would call whenever we're passing an argument into the get sidebar function that we're going to use later in some of the template pages. So we're going to call this footer dash sidebar so that it's really obvious what it is. And then here's a description, and we're going to say this is a widget area that goes, let's say it goes at the bottom of the page, of every page, I should say. Let's say the bottom of every page. Okay, and then we're going to style it that way. All right, and so that's really all you need to change right there. Now if I save this and I go to upload it, we'll say put. Okay, now the next thing that I can do just to check to see that it's going to be available is I can come back over here. Let's go back into our, oh, we don't want that. Let's go back into our back end here, and I'm going to go where it says widgets. I'm going to click on widgets. Okay, and now you see that I have a footer area, and it says this, it says this a widget. It's supposed to say this is a widget area that goes at the bottom of every page. And then over here where it says sidebar, I could actually go over here and put in a description for that too. Let's fix this first. This is a widget area. Okay, and then let's go copy this, and then here we can paste that and say this is a widget area that goes on the right side of, say, content pages or normal pages, standard pages, standard pages. Okay, it responsively cascades to the let's say cascades beneath the content area on small screens. Okay, so we can save that, and let's go ahead and put it back up there. And then if you want to test it here, we can refresh this page, and it tells you this is a widget area that goes to I should say, to the right side of standard pages. It responsively cascades, right? So you see that that's working. This is what it goes to. Let's change that. Okay, save it. We'll go ahead and put it up there. Now it's not actually going to like work. Like I could start putting stuff inside of my footer, but it's not going to do anything until I actually call it up in a template. So first of all, I have to make something called a file for the footer sidebar. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's look at our files first of all. And the first thing I want to show you is just first of all like how it gets called into the page. And we don't have anything dealing specifically with our footer sidebar yet. So let's take a look at like for instance page.php. Let's open that really quickly. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you see here page, things like page, single, and search, right? Some of these basic and archive, these are all some of your, if you remember back to me telling you about the hierarchy, those are some of your main pages. Like if I open archive, you see that we have a bunch of different stuff in the center, but then down at the bottom it says, you know, get sidebar, get footer. Page also has get sidebar, get footer at the bottom. You know, you could also look at, if we go to single, it should also have, you know, get sidebar, get footer. So some of these, you know, these pages, and search is another one, that are the default template ones. Whenever it has to, you know, WordPress has to make a decision. A lot of these have the same thing down here, and you'll notice where it says get sidebar. All right. The first thing that you'll see is if you go back to your files, you actually have something called sidebar.php. Now, if I don't pass a parameter in here that tells me which sidebar to go grab, it will automatically go and grab sidebar.php. So let's take a look inside of that. And if you look here, inside of that, it says if sidebar 1 is not active, then return, meaning then just do nothing, like just stop, okay? Otherwise, it's going to go ahead and it's going to load the dynamic sidebar using sidebar-1, okay? And so that's going to grab that thing that we registered over here in functions. It's going to grab the thing that's called sidebar-1. So what that means then is if we want something for the footer, let's just take a look at one of these. What we can do is we can go and look inside of where it says get footer. Well, guess what? Guess what it's going to do? It's going to get footer is going to go and grab a file called footer.php. So let's look inside of it. If we look inside of footer.php and you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that there's a place where we could go and we could load up a footer. Well, I should say a footer sidebar here. I'm going to just paste something so that, oops, tabbed it in really far. Let me pull that back in. Where I can use this function that says get sidebar, but instead of just saying get sidebar, like we did before, like before it just said that, get sidebar, and that meant that it was going to by default go and grab the sidebar.php file. I'm actually going to say get sidebar footer, and what it's going to do is it's going to look for anything that is named sidebar-footer. Okay, and so we still need to make that file. We haven't made that file yet, but this is where I would go ahead and call it. Okay, and now don't worry about what this is down here. This is calling the normal footer information, what they call a footer information. It's not a widgetized area, but it's basically where it's got the WordPress, you know, where it says powered by WordPress, and it has a copyright. You can just leave that alone. You could also just take that out if you didn't want to. Well, actually, you can't take that out. You can't take that out. So don't scratch that. You shouldn't take this out. But anyway, this is where you can go ahead and call the widgetized area where it says sidebar-footer.php, and it says, you know, will display footer widgets here. Okay, so I'm going to save this. This is my footer.php. Now I need to make something called sidebar-footer.php. Before I do anything, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload this so I don't forget. I'm going to put that file up there. Now the next thing that I can do if I want to get some idea of how I need to make it, you know, make a sidebar-footer.php file is I can look at the sidebar.php file and I can just make a copy of this and make some changes to it. So I'm going to do file save as, and I'm going to call it sidebar-footer.php, And then I'm going to make some changes here. The sidebar containing footer, the footer widget area, okay? And then here we'll go and change this to say footer sidebar. And remember, this value that we're looking for is what we have over here in our registered function. So where it says footer sidebar, you know, you can call it whatever you want. You don't have to call it this, but for the ID, you want to call it something that makes sense. You could call it footer widgets or something like that, if that's easier for you to understand. I'm going to go ahead and keep it the way I have it. So I'm going to say that I'm looking for a footer sidebar, and then I'm going to also put that down here so that it says, you know, basically, as a reminder, this is saying if the footer sidebar is not active, that's what this bang is, it's not active, then just return, do nothing, just keep moving on. Continue with the rest of the other template pages. Otherwise, it's going to allow this to go ahead and load, and it's going to say, all right, well, use the dynamic sidebar function to load the footer sidebar. Okay, so we're going to save this, and we're going to also upload this. Okay, and now if we want to do a test, what we can do is let's go ahead and add something to this footer widget area. And you know, if you want, you can do custom HTML, you can do text, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some custom HTML right here, and I'll just call this, I'm going to do something like all rights reserved. Let's try that. Just to have something there. I'm going to come back. Well, actually, I'll do Canon, oops, electric. Let's do all rights reserved, and then we can do. I can have a ampersand copy symbol. Okay, so that's going to be HTML, and then I'm not going to put a title here. Let's just save this, and then the other thing I could put is maybe you know, some recent articles or something like that. I could also put a list of categories here. I don't really have anything that's good yet, but you know, I could, let's do recent posts. I could also add that as well. I'm going to close this so that I can see what I've got here. Where is that? Recent posts. Let's drag that up here. And also, just so you know, like if you click on this, you can just say add it to the footer, add widgets, in case you can't drag and drop very easily. And yeah, so we can go ahead and save that, and you could add something else, but for right now, let's just go ahead and we can do a test. And it says it's still saving, but I think it's already saved. Yeah, there. And so I'm going to come back over here and do a refresh on the page, and then you see down here we've got Canon Electric, all rights reserved, and then we've got recent posts. I mean, it doesn't look like much, but it's there. And what's cool is if let's inspect this really quickly. And let's just take a peek at how it's showing up so that we know how we can start to style it. You see we've got, actually we have a problem because what we're finding is that this says div ID equals secondary. And I'll tell you right now that we have something else that's an ID called secondary up here. And if you remember when we styled, it's inside of our content, when we styled our other sidebar, we had secondary because the main content area is primary. So this is secondary. So that's sort of a problem. So the reason that that happened, first of all, is because we made a mistake, or I made a mistake. If you go back here to, not your functions page, but if you go back to your sidebar footer page, one of the things that we did when we copied, we just did a save as. We did saved our regular sidebar.php page. We saved it as sidebar-footer.php. We forgot to change the ID here in the HTML. That's really important. So we need to change this to something else. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it footer widget. Okay, footer widgets. Okay, that's the ID that I'm going to give it. You could call it something else, all right? But that's going to tell me that that is going to be a really obvious and easy way for me to style stuff. And you know, I'm not going to. You could call it ID equals footer if you wanted, because we actually have HTML that's an HTML footer. But I think that this makes it really easy if we do footer widgets. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to upload this. Let's go ahead and do a put. And then now whenever I come over here and I do a refresh on this, we should see, let's go back down here and let's do inspect on the right thing. And then you see here, here's our div with an ID of footer widgets. And so what's nice is now I can target the ID of footer widgets so that I can have it do whatever I want it to do. So I could, say that the background, for instance, we can do background, is black or something like that. Let's do RGBA, and I can do 0, 0, 0 for black, and then maybe like 0.9 so that it's almost black, or 0.8 so it's semi-transparent. All right, and so you can start to see some other stuff through it, and then we can start to do other kinds of styling. The other thing that I could do too is I could also, if I wanted to come in here to the inspector style sheet, I could also make descendants. If you remember the asides, these things are asides. I could go in here and I could say that I wanted any, let's copy this, let's say any aside that was inside of the footer widgets area could be width of, I don't know, 33%, and we could tell it then to float left, right? Something like that, right? And then we have these things floating next to each other. And then that means that the footer widgets area up here would have to also have an overflow of hidden, if you remember right. Does that make sense, right? Because overflow hidden is what you have to have on the parent of things that are floated items. And then you could put padding inside of each aside area. So let's put 1M or something like that. Yeah, anyway, you get the idea. And obviously this would be more of a desktop view, like that's pretty narrow for what we're doing here. So maybe on, the small mobile view, it would be 100%. So it would stack, but then like we could do, at media screen, and I'm gonna, do, say min width of 600 pixels, I guess. Let's just start there. We could do something different. And then we could say we're going to change the width here. We're going to say copy that. And actually, we need to copy the entire selector, and we need to end it. So the width then could be like, 50%, so that they would float side by side. See, then you get 50%. All right, and then if you wanted to have a third one, and we did in our diagram, we could have something where, here, I'm going to push this down to the bottom so that I can see better what's going on. We'll scoot this over. Okay, so then, I can also have another media query, for instance, that comes down here, and min width is, I don't know, let's say 900. I'm just kind of playing around right now, and I could try 33%. I don't know that this is what I really want, so 33.33 or something. And then I have room for a third one over here. And my 900 might be a little bit too small. I'm just not sure, but that might be okay. And so you can see how you can actually really start to style this right off the bat really easily, and I did that super quick. Okay. Okay, and real quickly, I'm going to jump. I'm not going to refresh the screen. If you wanted to keep all of this stuff, let's just copy it real quick, and we can put it in our little paste board. I'm going to get rid of all that stuff. And then I'm going to just jump over here into the back end real quick, and I'm going to do something else really fast. I'm going to go over to my media. I'll open this in a new window, I guess. And I'm going to add a new, actually, I don't know that I'm going to need to add a new thing. I can use my SVG, actually. What I can do is, instead of adding something new, I can go here where it says SVG modified, and I'm going to get the URL right here. This is something I can do. I'm going to copy this URL, and I'm going to close this. And now I'm going to jump back over here to my footer widget, and where I had my custom HTML, the other thing that I can do here is I can go ahead and put in my image tag, right? So I can go image src, src equals, and I can put the address of that SVG, and yeah, I can put the alt text as having it say Canon Electric logo, right? Say that, or just Canon Electric. Let's just say Canon Electric like that. And then we can have our image tag. And then if you wanted to give it a class or something, you could, but we could also just target it. But let's just say say ID equals footer logo, something like that. Okay, so that we can target that and maybe tell it to be display block or something like that. Tell it to take up 100% of its given space. Anyway, so we can do something like that. Let's hit save, and then let's just see what that looks like in another page. This is a page that I didn't have all that stuff worked up in, so I'm going to refresh it, and you see it does show my picture file right there, which is pretty cool. And so, you know, then I could go ahead and start styling stuff as necessary, you know, and which is really nice because then, you know, I've got stuff down here, and then I could give it a maximum width if I wanted, and so on and so on. But now I have something that I can actually start to style. And, you know, this is stuff that you should actually, you know, kind of be able to do by now, right? You should be able to kind of come in here and start to figure these kinds of things out. You know, I'm going to copy all of this so that I can paste it back in again. In fact, I can just paste it back in on this one. If I go over here and hit a plus symbol, I can get to an inspector style sheet, and I can just add something, just add all of that stuff that I had before, right? And so automatically it just starts to work, right? It just starts looking the way that I want it to look on a larger screen. You know, the Canon Electric isn't so huge. And then I could just style the text so that it fits up underneath. Maybe that's not the Canon Electric that I want. Maybe I actually want to use a different one that is stacked, you know, so I could go and optimize that SVG as necessary. This isn't the one that I necessarily want to use. Anyway, so, but you can start to style this stuff so that it looks like your XD mockup.